This is David Foster. I want to start by thanking Ed for running on the offense last month with Dan Oswald, which is a good one. And then I'd also, of course, like to start by welcoming Suzanne Verity, who's, maybe we can start this episode by just a very quick run through of your publishing experience, because the topic for today is sort of empowering rankings as a way to transform your position in the marketplace. And Suzanne's followed that going back to the beginning, I guess you could say. So first of all, Suzanne, thanks for doing this for On the Offense this month. It's nice to be here with you. Do you want to do a quick run through for everybody who doesn't know, just, how you got into the business, and then we'll go right into the public accounting report story.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I came to newsletter publishing when it was truly just newsletter publishing, and we were just the Newsletter Publishers Association. I always say it was before the E of electronic, it was before the SI of specialized information. It was just plain old newsletter publishing, and it was definitely before the hip, new, cool, upstart, renewed without the E ever entered anybody's mind. So that about a year out of college, I started working on newsletter publications, and Professional Publications was the name of the company. Bob Palmer was a CPA. He literally retired from a big 8 firm at that time. It might have even been 12. I think it was 12 at that time, and started on his kitchen table in the way many people started publications like ours back then. The publication he started, flagship, was Public Accounting Report. Within about 3 years, he had sister publications dealing with the practice management side of public accounting firms, which were kind of in their infancy. I happened to, a year out of college, start writing CPA Marketing Report, and there was a parallel track for law firm or attorney publications at that time. So we had kind of mirror images or 2 parallel tracks for those 2 professions, with some commonality and overlap between them to get some synergy. From there, I've really yo-yoed back and forth between publishing and subscription businesses and membership associations, and kind of, again, seeing the pendulum switch back and forth when newsletter publications or newsletters realized, oh, well, we can get more revenue potential, we can add more value if we transform ourselves into a membership association, and then vice versa. So I've seen it swing back and forth, and it's interesting. Now I'm part of this association that puts it all under one umbrella. They used to be different and strange bedfellows, and now we all find ourselves in the same place.
Yeah.
So it's always great to be in the same place with strange bedfellows, I guess, right?
Here we are, all of us, or speaking for myself, I can't speak for everyone else on the call. So when you with Public Accounting Report, when you started, the first instinct, I think there was sort of journalistic, correct?
Yes.
Could you maybe speak to that? Because that's where it started. It's become so much more than that, but go ahead.
Yeah, as I said, I was editor of CPA Marketing Report. Art Bowman at that time was editor of Public Accounting Report. PAR was the news publication under our roof, and we were more the service journalism, how-to peer type publication. So it's funny, at some of the original conferences where we would get together with, I remember in one in particular, a managing editor. See, that's where I'm a little scrambled there with all my professions. The managing editor roundtable I was kind of called out, I remember at that time, because my publication actually ended up sponsoring, and I was a founding member. I was the person who pulled together all the founding members of an association for CPA marketers. And they were like, that's not what we do in our business. That's kind of, you guys are part of the story. We don't do that. So there was a division between that journalistic news type of publication and professional, and then the other side that was more service journalism and how to.
So as you started this ranking, obviously you started from ground zero.
Yes.
Could you literally start us at year one? Because I know a number of people on the call have rankings already in place in some of their periodicals, but it kind of went in a different direction than I know you did. So year one, you're a journalist.
Year one.
What happened?
Thank God, year one, I wasn't in charge of those rankings. So that was my colleague, Art Bowman. So we literally started from ground zero. This was a profession that was very guarded. I mean, they're all about numbers, and here we are asking them to bare their souls and their numbers and their guts. They were all privately held. They were all closely held businesses, as were their clients, a lot of them, except for the big ones at the top. They did not have to share. There was no good reason for them to share that information at that time. It was essentially, they would be providing competitive intelligence to their rivals by sharing some of these numbers. So it was definitely an uphill battle. By year three, when I took over and as editor of Public Accounting Report and was responsible for the rankings, I will say that I almost did not take the job, because that was the first order of business, and it was a very tall order. Yeah. I would say we had maybe 30% of the firms kind of volunteer, of the real top 100, volunteering their numbers and providing and complying with the few questions that we asked at that time. We filled in some blanks by collecting information that we were able to scrap together from more local reports, and we just filled in fields and blanks. We did have some blanks or some fields that were left blank at that time, and with NAs, they aren't there anymore. Yeah. And they shortly were not there, because we figured out ways to kind of compel or give incentive to firms to fill in the blanks.
Talk about the incentives a little, because I think your general policy was to essentially underrank everyone who didn't cooperate. Is that a fair? Yeah,
we got to that point. It's a very delicate dance, because these are the same people who you are relying on to answer your phone and be able to interview to get your next story, especially the sister publications, which don't have any kind of acrimonious relationship, trying to cover news that might not reflect well on firms. So in the beginning, some of the incentive, it's literally peer pressure. So once you get one, and it's the guys that that you legitimately have a little bit more revenue than they do, well, that makes you kind of want to volunteer that. And why would you give them the edge in the rankings? So, okay, yeah, I'll be a little more forthcoming, because Joe down the street, he's making $1 million less than we are, and I really want, that makes us look bad. So there was some of that. So it's peer pressure. It was, to be honest with you, it's professional pride. And I think those two things are kind of wrapped up together. I just described one instance of that. The other thing that started to draw people out is, as soon as they saw others starting to kind of tout the honor, and that's how we positioned it, the honor of being recognized, that drew a few more people out of the bushes. And, so every year you get more firms incrementally to volunteer and comply and provide their information. Now, at the
Yep.
point, let's say it's year 5 or 6, and you have some blanks in there, and you know there are firms that are supposed to be there, but they just tell you outright, it's none of your business. We don't have to give you that information, and we're not going to. And we're like, okay, well, we know you belong there, so we don't want to leave you out. So we essentially came up with a formula for estimating, and
Yep.
our rule, I remember some of you know Richard Ossoff. At this time, the publication was owned by Stratford Publications, and Richard and I got together. He's ex McKinsey, so he's all about, you know, algorithms before they existed too. So we got together, and you know, he even helped me understand the math so I could do the calculations. But we would look at the groups, we would look at the firms, we would create kind of peer groups based on some things that we knew went into the calculations. So in
Yep.
that case, it would have been number of partners, because we were looking at net income per partner. That was the gold standard of measuring the success of a professional services firm. So our formula, we would look at the peer group, we would take their averages, we would extrapolate and apply those averages to the metrics we did have that were public about the firm that was non-disclosing. We'd run the numbers, we'd see where they stacked. And if you say you have 13 to 18, that's where you knew they belonged somewhere in that ranking. And you had firms that were providing the information with or with definitive data and numbers filling up 1 through 14.
Yep.
We never gave them the benefit of outranking a firm that was giving us the information that was counted, we could count on. So we made it painful for them not to comply. And when they complained, all I had to say was, hey, we asked you 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
I'm happy for you to correct a record right now. And we can put that information in the field for next year so that we can, work on that. But I never went back and revised a ranking that was already published, because that would have, undermined my own goals.
Yeah. And you
So,
had the one more question, just sort of about the mechanics of how you got started, and then let's move on to, like, as professional publications move on to Stratford, and now these products are in a new home, and these rankings had a lot to do with the value of the company when they were sold, like, because
absolutely.
they were the high profile part of the company that Art and Robert started, like, definitely. But just on the mechanics, I know, because my instinct would be to sort of get some researchers, on the phone and start digging this up. But you actually, as much as possible, tried to have all this work split up among the news journalists, because you were digging up stories all over the place. Is that kind of true?
Yeah, I mean, we defined the top 100 as our core audience. So you have at that time, let's say the Big 8 and Big 6, and that news was of interest to those people in that same peer group at that same tier. But there's not a local firm that really can do very much about, based on what's going on with Arthur Andersen at that point. So that had its appeal, that had sex appeal to the media, which is a whole other reason to do these things. But for the average rank and file below, like, the top 10, there were different stories of different interests, and they wanted to see those numbers for other reasons. So that was essentially our beat. Again, we were covering the same news of those same top 100 firms that we were shining a spotlight on in our rankings. So at that time, there were 5 of us on the team, including me. We literally divided up, I'd say, about 125 names, because we always went beyond the top 100, knowing that some of them would show up in the shuffle in the next year. So we literally divided them up. Everybody had a file. Back then it was actual physical files. And we were responsible for keeping in touch with those, with our group. I called it the fishing program because we were fishing for leads, we were fishing for information. So we would make, all 5 of us were in charge of making at least 3 calls at times that we weren't responding to some news event, to stay in touch with those key contacts. And let me say, it wasn't 3 calls, it was 3 like interviews, 3 actual contacts. And we timed those very strategically. One, as part of our survey, we realized very soon that it was important for us to ask about the financial year end for each of the firms. So knowing that, we gave ourselves a clue about when they were going to have their timely information in their current results, even if it was mid-year, which most of the time it was mid-calendar year. So we would make calls about a month in, realizing these are accountants, so they're going to be crunching their numbers pretty quickly. So a month after their year end, we would call and say, hey, what's going on? Well, it might just so happen that they just had the partner meeting where they talked about, hey, here's how our year ended up, and what are we going to do next year in terms of growth? So we knew it was an opportune time for them to have a story to tell. So we got a lot of leads that way, just in conversations with the managing partners at that time. And then over time, we also realized, hey, this is also a good time. It's June. We publish in September, so we don't even have our questionnaire out for the top 100. Let's go ahead and see if we can walk through the survey while we have them on the phone and fill in some of the fields. And they were happy to do that. It just gave us a lead on filling, if you look at a blank spreadsheet times, I don't know how many columns times 150 firms that you're going to then work down. It's a lot of work. So anything you can do in advance is helpful.
Well, it sounds like the interesting that the survey gave an excuse for your journalists to call their main contacts. So it empowered the organization because you had a reason to call.
And I don't think they were necessarily aware of the timing at all, but it made us look pretty smart. Wow, we're having this conversation, and gosh, we do have a lot to talk to them about and to disclose about, and it might even be good news. So we're happy to talk about them.
That's a big stage. Well, once you got it up and running too, because I remember back then, Art and Robert, and I think you too. I mean, you were getting quoted in the business journals all over the place because there was, you had no competitors other than local things from, say, Cranes or things, that sort of thing. So it was astounding how quickly you became known as sort of the arbiters of success in that profession.
It's scary when you realize, the Wall Street Journal is calling you an industry expert, and you're going, oh shit, I really need to know what I'm talking about here. But you're grounded in, thank God for me, because I'm like, okay, let me collect some information and give them something they can really use. Well, I had all this data. And beyond that, we also collected data about, we started something called auditor change back when you had to just like call that information from nowhere. So we had we had a corner on the market on that data, to the point that Art was invited to speak before Congress to share information about the accounting profession. We had the SEC come to us and purchase our database because they wanted to be able to look at, in a quick and easy way, how a pending merger might be an antitrust concern. And that made a lot of headlines and put Public Accounting Report as a citation at the Wall Street Journal more times than I can count.
Well, didn't you told me too, you had the interesting case that one of the I think it was the Big 12 back then, the two of them were merging,
Yeah.
and somebody from Japan got wind of it and called you,
Yeah.
and you of course had no idea, but because of that you got to scoop the US story on a merger. I mean, that's how high your position became.
Well,
It,
yeah, and I mean, I would have to say that's attributable directly to having these rankings, because the firms at the top, there was interest around the globe in what was going on with those firms.
yeah,
We were able to distribute those rankings worldwide, and there was interest worldwide, because I kind of was thinking about this yesterday, and it's a real testament to, for every, in journalism school, at least it's at that time, they would say, for every national story, there's a local angle. Well, take that up the chain now, as business has become more global, every global story has a local angle and vice versa. And
yeah,
so those rankings allowed us to provide a news peg for every major business publication around the world, including Cranes, including, the Atlanta Business Chronicle, including alumni publications for, schools where the managing partner,
yeah,
graduated, et cetera.
yeah,
So
yeah,
as long as you can help them see and interpret that angle,
yeah,
you can
yeah,
get a lot of publicity out of it. And, oh, in that scenario, yeah, what happened, I think it was 1997, and there were a lot of there was a lot of consolidation, and they were trying to one up each other among the big eight, going down to what's now the big four. And this was a rumored merger between, um, it wasn't even Ernst and Young then, it might have been Ernst and Winnie,
yeah.
and KPMG Pete Marwick at that time. And so I got a call. It was late Friday afternoon, and because it always is. And it was a reporter from Japan. And he said, hey, I need a comment on the merger between blah, 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 or what we've heard, the announcement that these two firms are going to merge. And I'm, again, kind of like, oh, shit. I covered the mouthpiece before they could hear me say that. But I did yell out to my reporters, start checking this out and cancel your weekend plans, because we have a story to chase down. That it was an embargoed story, but they were 13 hours ahead of us. So their dateline beat ours. And I had that, I got that lead, and yeah, we were able to chase it down and scoop
Ready to go
everybody.
Monday. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the journalistic part of this I love, and the power of that, but it just, maybe move on, because now what started out as a basic journalistic listing has become the part of a lot of different products. It's gone through 3 different owners, I think. Could you just talk about some of the other, quickly, some of the other ancillary products, revenue opportunities, the other things that this ranking empowered at professional publications and at Stratford, and now with the current owners?
Yeah, the Platt Group is inside public accounting. It was PAR has folded a number of years ago, but the one surviving, well, there's another one, but the one main surviving one that I think has surpassed us all is the Platt Group, and they have a publication called Inside Public Accounting. I would recommend for all of you to go to their website and just see how the heck they've merchandised this thing and capitalized on it for revenue potential. I don't know what potential they've reached, but I do know enough about the company, having advised them a number of years ago as a consultant, that they wouldn't still be doing it. It wouldn't have grown to the point it has unless they were making considerable money from it. One thing I want to back up for 1 minute though, and as the kind of the basis for these rankings in a world where there are rankings for everything, I wanted to back up and kind of look at what what makes us so interested as a society in those rankings. And I found something I thought was really interesting. It was published in the American Journal of Sociology, but the introduction to this report says, in the past 2 decades, and this is about 10 or 20 years old, in the past 2 decades, demands for accountability, transparency, and efficiency have prompted a flood of social measures designed to evaluate the performance of individuals and organizations. So that gets back to the service journalism piece.
Yep. Yeah.
Which I just wanted to kind of go back there and mention that, because you shouldn't be doing a ranking just to do a ranking. There should be a real reason to do it, a real gap, a real service to your audience, and in some cases to the greater world. I mean, essentially, this is a public accounting of public accounting firms.
Yeah.
It holds them accountable and does some of the original work that as journalism you can be doing. So I look at it as that, and then as a service, of course, to our subscribers and readers as well, and clients. So
that's a great
okay,
perspective.
So,
I worth noting. Thanks for quoting that article.
Well, it's important to remember that, because you hear all the controversy about, like, U.S. News and World Reports. Are their college rankings really real? And well, if they are, and they're grounded in the right spirit, they're real and they have real value and provide a service. So getting back to your question about what this other group has done. So over time, I'll cast it back from what, like, Inside Public Accounting is doing now, as observed by me, such as that is.
There's nothing
Take
more
it for what it's worth, but
yeah. No, you are the source.
They're 30 years in, so they've got a pile of 30 years worth of data about these firms that nobody else has.
Yeah.
When I was advising them probably 10 years ago, I said, I think you guys need to think about going to the top 200. So extending beyond what you've done for 100 and go down to 200, because not only do people want to be in those rankings, but there's value in the data that they can provide to each other, to your current subscribers that may be looking to acquire, fold, build, roll them in, roll them up, consolidate, compete with, honestly, too. There's value to vendors who are trying to understand those firms, that group. So now you're taking it further in the ranks, and you can cut the data all different ways. So now, believe it or not, I was very surprised to find this. Now they have a top 400. So this is a profession. David, you might know now what, like, the AICPA's most current numbers on, like, the total number of firms. I don't, but
I mean, it used to be something like 14,000, but as I recall, but I think it's less than that. But it's so it's very top heavy. So you're accounting for, it's like international wealth. If you take the top 400, you've got like 99% of it, kind of
exactly
thing.
Probably the 80-20 rule we might apply there. But the top of the rankings now, it's about, I think it's 28 billion, with Deloitte at the top, and then there's a local Hickory, North Carolina firm is number 400, and they're like 6.6 billion. I mean, million. Sorry, that shows you the rankings. What they've been able to do to get brand value, and beyond that, monetization, they now have a very powerful database that can be sliced and diced and cut all different ways. They do that to create lots of fodder for stories in their main publication. They have many special reports that would drill down, for instance, on a functional area like HR, or HR, firm administration, so operational aspects of the business, so that you can look in there and, retool and benchmark your firm's, what you're doing and the performance against what these successful firms are doing, and try to refine and retool. Those go from anywhere from, I think, $579 a pop up to more than $1,000. If you buy the entire set for the year, it's $2,700. So it's a license to the data, and you receive all those special reports as part of the package. You can upgrade your, they've added value to their main publication. You can have a single license. And what I gathered from the website now is that they don't any longer print the publication, but a single license is $697, going up to an enterprise license starting at almost $2,000. And that's probably, 5 seats or something like that. And they would go up from there. They sell reprints. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, and they have, like, out of the data, they're doing best places to work. They've like, so
best of the best. So
yes.
Best of the best is kind of the cream of the crop. And again, it's all based on net income per partner, or some meaningful metric that's objective, that says these guys are actually more profitable and more successful than the rest of you guys.
Yeah.
You're great. You make a lot of money, but look at these guys.
Could you maybe, because Wayne's asked a question about that. Wayne, do you want to jump on? Yeah, it's exactly what you're talking about, Suzanne.
Yeah, so yeah, we've done some rankings based on just company size, but like in some of our markets, people want to know who's best in a specific area. So like we publish Chief Executive Magazine, so our CEOs might want to know who's the best in strategy or organizational design or a nuance, a segment within that. And so trying to get the qualitative, we've done some surveying of our readership about who's best, but for the big firms, you get a lot of votes, but there's some great boutiques, but we don't get enough to make it quantifiably, statistically significant.
It's really hard when you cross into, there are different types of business, because a service business is different than a product business, is different from healthcare, is different from manufacturing. So that's a bigger challenge. We knew we had that single metric that everybody was going after, and we defined it we made it very clear. This is the arbiter of success for us and for your profession. So yours is a little more daunting.
Yeah, and that was size primarily. Is that what you guys focused on?
Ours was net income per partner, and that's like leverage, realization, utilization.
Okay.
Things that accountants always dig into. They love that stuff. So that was another benefit. We knew they had this data. They just weren't going to tell you what it was. So that's more challenging. Best places to work, because I've looked at those behind the scenes as a reporter. What are they actually looking at? When I was a marketing director at an accounting firm for a short time, and the only thing my managing partner, upon hiring me, said the only thing he wanted me to do was get them on the top 25 accounting firms list in the Atlanta Business Chronicle. Well, that all it was, I said back to him, well, then just hire more people, because all they are doing in our market is they're basing it on headcount. I guess lucky for you, most of the time people are more willing to tell you headcount than they are how much money they make, but they also cheat. I'll tell you that they also cheat. They'll cobble together four mailroom guys and count them as a full-time employee. So
you better, I guess we all do. I mean, I'm 6'4". Everyone knows that. So,
David, this is not a confessional.
yeah, exactly. The Tom, Tom, do you want to jump in? You made a point about revenue size rankings and doing some more qualitative stuff like Suzanne's talking about. Do you want to jump on?
We started with a top 40 about 10 or 11 years ago, and it's now metastasized into about 150 to 160.
So
But
same.
part of that, it's a really fragmented niche sectors within that big sector. So it started being really apples and oranges. So it became a journalistic function, I think, where we were able to help with even just helping the industry define these sectors and how they play with each other and the overlapping of them. But then additionally, we created a market leaders category and emerging leaders, and really focused more about the innovation and those that were being, we were able to qualitatively identify those with high growth rates, go and profile them. And that started to get as much traction really as sort of the big gorillas in the industry. So that combination of the qualitative, it absolutely is a powerful piece. And both aspects of that really drove the site licenses at the large companies. It's been a very powerful driver for that overall.
Yeah. Yeah, you make a good point. That's, I think, what they did with Best of the Best. So they looked at more the growth rate or the innovation, or they went a little, well, and it's as proven by the fact that there were the Best of the Best includes firms at all along the spectrum. It wasn't just the big ones. It wasn't just based on that revenue number. So you start to learn more about your business and really analyze the data so that you see some common success factors, and you can zero in on those. They even, and we did this as well, you can even, there's a lot of interest in doing profiles of those firms, just regular interview profiles of the managing partners or other practice leaders at those firms. And what inside, we did some of this, but Inside Public Accounting has made it much easier to purchase, but they actually have marketing packages, so you can buy reprints, e-prints, licenses to highlight your firm in context of the others, so that you can provide that information for clients or would-be clients. And I would say equally important to accounting firms, depending on what the cycle is, and maybe this is true in your businesses too, prospective recruits who are looking to work for a firm that's successful, or where they know they can make more money eventually, or where they know they can specialize in something that's of interest to them or that they're passionate about.
Yeah.
So it opens a lot of doors
Yeah,
that way too, I think.
Yeah, the profiling starts to get into, again, back to the journalism and to the richness of the database. And then you can start almost providing, I imagine, consulting level, like market analysis. Yeah.
Yeah, they do. They do some custom research. They do some actual consulting. And I will say one other thing that I think they've done well that, Tom, is similar to what you're saying with the large licenses. There is a group of about 30 associations of CPA firms that they've banded together to try to have advantages over competitors in the market and share costs of services, things that they might do analogous to the infrastructure that some of the larger national and international firms would have. They've banded together into these associations. I've worked for one of those as well. What Inside Public Accounting has done now, every one of those associations, we used to do our own financial or economic survey or practice management survey. What they've done is essentially created a white label type situation. So you can, you, me, at PKF North American Network at that point, I could subcontract with or contract with Inside Public Accounting. They would conduct the survey of my members. So that little contained group, they would conduct the survey with them. They would then aggregate the data from my firms into their database, which helps them. But then I would be able to offer my firms benchmarking services, you know, and I wouldn't have to do the thing that is not my core business, you know, do this survey and have this data. So they've done that very successfully. And those are big ticket types of engagements for them. I'd say probably, I'm just making this up, but I'm going to say probably around the $50,000 mark.
Yeah, that would be my guess too. But it obviously a higher ticket deal, and with the big firms, it could turn into a retainer for a long time. And I just note for everyone that in addition to sort of these, I was going to say ancillary services, but they really are become sort of publishing divisions unto themselves. Tom has also just mentioned, you know, the lead gen capacity. You know, certainly, I think for many of us, we have a lot of this data already in our CRM system, you know, because we've been collecting it, but we don't, you know, so if you don't have a ranking, you may have more information already than you think in your Salesforce installation or whatever you've got. But to formalize it and start thinking of it as a service or, you know, consulting, benchmarking, like Suzanne's saying.
Well, I can guarantee you that that Mike Platt, who now is one of the owners at Inside Public Accounting, he used to work for an association as well. And I can guarantee you he is on stage at most of those annual meetings of those associations as well.
Yes, he is.
For a fee.
Yeah. Well, that gets back. Yeah, you really, I mean, you started it with 30% participation, made up the rest, but now it's positioned Mike as the most knowledgeable person on the planet on this subject, you know, so that curve's really a spectacular story going back to professional publications, you know, where it started. It's quite
we did everything. It was so manual, you just can't even believe it. And you know, I joke and tell people it's whenever I went out on a business trip, I would go to the hotel and rip the accountant CPA section out of the yellow pages, and we'd take them back, and the, you know, marketing department would key them in, and that was our compiled database. We did it the hard way. And you know, now when I think of ways you can go out and scrape data and pre-populate some of those fields of data, and then just, you know, you're working on filling 10 fields instead of 100 or thousands. So
yeah, exactly.
All while walking uphill in the snow.
Yeah, exactly. I'd also mentioned Robin Crumby put a note about a data IQ in the comments as a good model. By the way, of somebody that's, you know, somebody else that people on this call can look at. Well, maybe I partially thought of this session because, you know, BVR is looking at doing a couple of things like this, but also because I happen to notice in some marketing material I've seen for CPA firms that they have the banner, you know, the top, you know, one Inside Public Accounting top 100 or top 25 bit, like it's featured on their websites, and so also the goal that it has that much brand value to your customers. That's got to increase your renewal rates. It's all the good metrics we're all aiming for.
Oh, one thing I didn't mention that I found we got a lot of value from that was not directly, you couldn't directly report, point to revenue, but it opened doors for us because our subscribers knew that we had influence because the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, their local publication were citing us, were interviewing us. I remember the Wall Street Journal, who didn't want to give credit to any other publication for doing anything better than they did. They kept referring to me as an industry expert, and it made me mad. I'm like, sure, I guess you could look at that as a compliment, but that wasn't going to get anybody back to me or our publications or get them to purchase them. So I said, look, I'm not, I'm not an industry expert. I am, but that's not what my attribution should be. That's not what qualifies me to make this comment or for you to feature this data from our publication. I'm editor of Public Accounting Report. And they said, well, that's not our style. We can't do that. And I said, well, then I can't provide you with this data. I mean, I agreed with Richard that we were going to have this kind of ultimatum.
Yep.
Because I knew the next time they needed that information, nobody else was going to have it.
Yep.
And so sure enough, they came back and Liz McDonald was, okay, well, let's use editor of Public Accounting Report. But I wasn't after the glory. I wasn't trying to build a consulting career. We were trying to get branding for our publication. So I think you have to be willing to be able to do that too. But you have the assurance of that because again, you're resting on this foundation of information and you have a corner on the market. If you can get that, it's very powerful.
That's spectacular. I mean, this is an interesting topic for On the Offense because a lot of what you did was just so tactical, but the impact was strategic, so and as you shared the article from the sociologist, you're kind of meeting a fundamental human need in a confusing world too. So there's social value, as you pointed out, and several of the comments, including Tom and other people have said,
you see Xbox knock the cover off the ball in Q1.
Sorry there,
Xbox.
Daniel. Yeah, thanks. Like Tom's, I think for many people who have rankings, it's the single biggest thing people come to the website for. So it's like what you were at the beginning of and what you've watched develop over all these years really becomes the center of the brand almost. So it's really important. Well, we're perfectly on time to wrap it up. So I obviously Stephanie and Ed want me to remind everyone that you absolutely have no choice other than to be in Roslyn on the 6th, 7th, 8th of June coming up. Hope to see you there, and there'll be black limousine vehicles showing up in front of your homes to drag you to Roslyn if you don't do it on your own. So but Suzanne, thanks for sharing something you've been with for your whole career, really. So looking at the long,
it doesn't have as much application for where I am now, but it was a good ride.
Yeah. Congratulations where you are now too, as always. So we'll sign off. Obviously the discussion will continue on the Guild group. If you have questions, we're all in touch with each other there, so it's easy to continue, and it's great, fantastic to see all of you. Good luck during April and May, and we'll see you next month.